am proud to bring an episode to you with my friend, Adam Lamb. Chef Coach Adam Lamb has been a wonderful advocate and advisor for me in my new journey as an entrepreneur. He and I were originally planning on recording an episode on job satisfaction and hospitality. And then as we do, we got into a deep conversation about our successes and challenges as entrepreneurs and said, fuck it, let's hit the record button. So that's what we did. For those of you that don't know Adam, he is a culinary leadership coach, an expert in elevating chefs to excellence with emotional intelligence, relationship building, and communication mastery. In this episode, we get real about our lessons as entrepreneurs in vulnerability, growth, and the power of community connections in our business success. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the No Hesitations podcast, the show where restaurant leaders learn tools, tactics, and habits from the world's greatest operators. I am your host, Kristen Marvin, with Solutions by Kristen. I've spent the last 2 decades in the restaurant industry and now partner with restaurant leaders to help them overcome burnout, increase retention, reignite their passion, and drive successful businesses. I also work directly with restaurant leaders through one-on-one coaching and group workshops to help them identify their blind spots, build their confidence, and overcome challenges in their business. If you're curious about learning more, visit my website at kristenmarvin.com/contact to book a 15-minute goal planning session. This podcast is sponsored by Schedulefly. Schedulefly provides a simple, web-based and app-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you are using pen, paper, Excel, or a fancy scheduling software with tons of bells and whistles that you don't use, Schedulefly is perfect for your business. When I was a regional manager handling 7 locations, Schedulefly was our go-to for scheduling. It's hands down the easiest platform that I've ever worked with. And their employee scheduling tool is awesome for shooting out mass messages about crucial restaurant updates. Visit schedulefly.com and mention the No Hesitations podcast to learn more and get 10% off. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Adam. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kristen. It's so nice to be here with you again. I've missed you. I mean, we had this wonderful episode where you were coaching me.
Yep.
I don't know. Did you get any feedback from that episode, or were people kind of freaked out about what that was about, like being a fly on the wall during a coaching session?
You know, the feedback I got was that it was really awesome to see that laid out in on such a really cool platform. It was something different, but it's also opened up some doors where I've had a couple clients say, I'd love to do that on the show as well. And
really?
Yeah, which is really fun.
I think that's an excellent idea. Because I was talking about you to someone else. I think he's a mutual friend of ours, and I noticed that he produced a podcast episode where he actually coached somebody live on the show. So I think you're onto something big time.
Sweet. I won't take credit for that, but hell yeah, that's great. We need to get the word out there, right?
It's okay. I DM'd him a little bit, a little poke in the side.
Nice.
Oh, where'd you get that idea, dude?
It's such a powerful tool, and it's scary to be vulnerable in a setting like this. But we know that's where growth happens, is when you really get uncomfortable. And, it's, again, really appreciate you being on the show. And I think we were talking earlier and we had an idea for where we wanted to go today. But as we continued on our conversation, we realized that we should have recorded what we were just talking about 20 minutes ago, and thought we'd take another opportunity today to be vulnerable with both of us. We've both been in a position where we are reinventing ourselves. And when you're an entrepreneur, I feel like that never stops. It is a daily and weekly and monthly and yearly occurrence. And it's a lot of self-reflection. It's a lot of searching. It's a lot of reflection. It's a lot of questioning, and it's a lot of doubt. But I think as we roll into 2024, I know we've been talking about goals. I just sat down and whiteboarded yesterday what I want to accomplish in 2024 and how to make this business really sustainable, because I think that is the biggest challenge being an entrepreneur, is creating different revenue streams, keeping it sustainable. And I know my goals have just drastically changed over the last, year plus in being in this business.
I think it's not only for entrepreneurs, but anybody, starting something new is going to fall into the trap of trading dollars for hours. There's no way around it, especially if you're undertaking a discipline that maybe you have a little bit of mastery around. But, take podcasting, for instance. The theory is that you need 100 hours. If you do something for 100 hours, you'll be in any discipline whatsoever, you'll be better than 95% of the public. And when I mean better, I just mean more prepared, more experienced. You understand what the flow is like. And it's a hard switch from working in your business to working on your business. So I think this conversation today is going to be a lot about that, because both of us realize that as long as you're working in your business, number one, it's hard to find where the fun is. And second of all, it's hard to see where the profit is, because again, you're kind of in the forest for the trees, and maybe you're not necessarily sure of which place to take it. And the one thing that I was really excited to talk to you about on this podcast, because there's been so much that's happened in the last couple of weeks since we last talked. And I know we've been texting, but I was really excited to kind of bounce ideas off you, because I realized that as an entrepreneur, most of us are starting out as solopreneurs. And so we're in this vacuum. And I'm a great conversationalist, but talking to myself, I can only get so far. Because if we're both of the same mind, then one of us is superfluous. So I know I trust and respect you and your wisdom, such that I wanted to bounce some ideas off you, because frankly, I value that and know that, when two come together, there is often an opportunity that didn't exist or wasn't thought of by the two individual minds. And when they come together, it's something that probably better than either one of them could have come up with.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Excited.
Right back at you. I appreciate your wisdom too. It's interesting that you said, I've never heard that stat before, that if you spend 100 hours in something, you're better than 95%. I've read that if you spend 10,000 hours on something, you are considered to be an expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder what's in between.
Right. I think it's 18
lot.
minutes a day, right? 18 minutes a day is all practice it takes. But I think that kind of, so I've taken on this moniker, Mr. 1%, because in my recovery from my back surgery last year, actually before that, I had played around with 75. Big shout out to Andy Frizella. But a couple years ago, during 75 hard, I failed the first 3 times coming out of the gate, because I thought it was something that I had to do in order to get onto something else. Mm-hmm. And that 4th time, I figured, oh, no. The juice is really in the process. And was successful, was about 43 pounds. All my numbers came down. And then I realized that really the thing that sustained me throughout that was this idea of just being 1% better than yesterday. Yeah. So I've kind of embraced that around, like, it doesn't have to be big steps, Kaizen, small steps over time yield big results, but we can't really nail where that happened. I don't know when exactly I lost the first 10 pounds or the first 20 pounds, but I do know at the end I had lost 43 pounds, which I gained back, because at the end of it, I thought, okay, I did it. Good. Yeah. I completely let my foot off the gas and didn't understand that in order to achieve better results, I had to continue to do the things that had got me there. Yep. And instead I'm like, okay, victorious. I'm victory now. Yeah. I don't have to do those things anymore, which is like, yeah, it's brutal, because that weight came back fast.
Well, it's interesting, right? I made it 40 days on my 75 hard, and I've done Whole30s, and I've gone through a lot of those journeys over the course of my career. And I try to approach it, as you just said, try to pick 1 or 2 things from those moments of, where do I feel the best impact? What's sustainable for me? How can I incorporate this into my daily life? Because 75 hard is so intense. Yeah. Right. 2 45-minute workouts a day, plus you're reading, plus you change your diet, right? You're changing all these things
down to water
at the same time. Yeah, exactly. And so if you can, I think, again, take 1 or 2 pieces of that and incorporate that, your chances are, are better for keeping it. But kudos to you for doing that again, man. It's hard.
Well, and you bring up a great point. If I can just interject really quickly, most of my life, it's been kind of dramatic. Have a big personality, a loud mouth, kind of a little bit of swagger. I have big physical features. So when I walk into a room, I kind of part the ways. But I thought, also as an artist and a chef, someone who's passionate and creative, that there had to be some type of, I don't want to say duress, but I certainly for a long time fell under the idea that, in order to be a great artist, you had to be in pain, or had to have some type of conflict in order to draw that stuff out. So very often I would make grand gestures. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this all at the same time, as opposed to, taking one thing, like you're saying, and just kind of chomp that down. And that works for just about everything. But when it came to my physical form and recovery since my surgery last April, I came to the decision that I've been doing some things in my life for a long time that no longer served me. And I had to really come to my own judgment about that. Couldn't be doing it for you, couldn't be doing it for my wife, couldn't be doing it for my children. I had to do it for myself. And so today is 8 days without nicotine, drink, drugs. So I'm clean, sober, and nicotine free without any substitutes or artifices. And it's such a different place. You asked me before we got on, well, how long's you been 7 days? And I'm like, 7 days for what? Like 7 days not eating, 7 days not smoking, 7 days not drinking. I failed so many times with 75 hard because of the drink, and so to put it all together, but even though 75 hard, I was still smoking. Right. So to say to myself, finally, at this stage in my life, if not now, when? Because, I've been doing the same thing up until this point and my results are mixed. So I think I'm willing to go on the adventure to try something that I haven't done since I was probably 15 years old.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, congrats to you.
Freaky.
I know I asked you earlier, like, how's the sleep? Because I know when I stopped drinking, the sleep was like everything. Oh my God. I felt so heavy when I would sleep and sleep all through the night and so awake and just ready to challenge the day, conquer the day. It was amazing. So
yeah, I mean, I haven't even have sleep apnea, right? Because again, I'm kind of big and but that usually means that I can probably time it, toss and turn about 3-4 times a night. And over the last 3 nights, it's 11, 10, 10:30, go to bed and I don't move. And I'm,
right.
up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. And like, okay, even my alarm went off today at 4 o'clock. And I thought, nah, just get 2 more hours worth of sleep. And I turned off my phone and my head hit the pillow. And I'm like, all right, what am I doing?
Yeah. And your body doesn't need it, after
right.
too, which is great. So I think, again, I love this whole conversation around reinventing yourself. I think a lot of it starts with your health, reinventing your health, your diet, your getting your mindset in a position where you are ready to tackle new challenges and take on, as much as a solo entrepreneur demands. I don't know about you, but I really feel like running restaurants, being in the restaurant business for 2 decades has really set me up for success in terms of being a solopreneur because I'm so used to managing so many different moving parts, but it's also hindered me a little bit because I have to be careful not to lean into so many projects at the same time.
Heard that. I think it's very, very important to have a great sense of discernment about what's going to serve you in the moment. And so I came across a statement like, my mission right now is not your mission for your company, like for the year but right now, like I knew after my surgery that my mission could only be about reclaiming my physical virility and my health. That's it. That's all I could have bandwidth for. And I want to push back a little bit on this idea about reinventing yourself, because I'm not quite sure if it's reinventing yourself or rediscovering yourself. And, but I totally get this whole idea about wanting to spread. I think for me, because it was primarily in the back of the house, the thing I most miss are the teams. Yeah. Right. And so to start off without a team, I think has only kind of added to my fantastical thinking. Like I mentioned that I'd started this hot sauce company. If I had a team around me of people who I respected, we probably could have gamed this out. Like, gosh, where were you 5 years ago when I said, Kristen, I got this great idea. Yeah. And you would have said, let me ask you some questions.
Yeah.
which,
Totally.
which great friends and great coaches do. But, it helps to have someone else as I said before, kind of in the room to talk this stuff out.
Yeah.
Because if not, then my tendency is to kind of go all in on stuff that may not necessarily be kind of what you need. So I asked you, we had many conversations before you started a podcast. And one of the things I asked you was like, why do you think you need a podcast? Because some people are great at speaking to crowds. Some people are great on film, videotaping themselves. Some people are like you and I think are great behind the microphone, but not everybody needs to do all these things. So what actually serves to build your business, and only do those things, whether it's I am not necessarily convinced that everybody needs a newsletter every week.
Yeah.
I know it's a great trend, and I know there's some people who are like gaining some extra revenue streams from that. And I say, good on you. For me, it's like, geez, another thing.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Totally.
and so to have an idea of like what's actually necessary to move your business forward, I think is very important, because as a podcaster, I was doing one thing. And then when I decided, no, I'm also, the reason I got into podcasting was to support my coaching business. Then it became very simple for me to talk about like what my call to action was. Like, why isn't your call to action the fact that, you're a coach? Whereas your discovery, I'm like, oh gosh, I never thought of it, because I'd started one and then brought the other one into it. So to have this idea of like a whiteboard, like you said, where you can map everything out, and then those supportive elements, I think for me helps kind of like find the gold in amongst everything else.
Totally. Well, there's so many points that you brought up here, but again, thinking about any restaurant owners that are listening to this right now, running a business by yourself and being a solopreneur in whatever business you have, it's lonely, right? The word solo is in there. You are all alone. How are you fighting that loneliness, overcoming that, bouncing off ideas? Because you're right. You can get, and I'm the exact same way. I can get so excited about some shiny object that I see or something I read about. And I'm like, I'm really passionate about that. And I can go all in and completely derail myself from all the other things that I need to get done for the week. And then kick myself later for having to scramble to do the podcast, to write the newsletter, to put out the content, to, network and all those things. How are you overcoming that solo part of the solopreneur?
I think that's an excellent question. In reflection in 2022 and 2023, I love to help people. I mean, I'm service oriented from jump. I mean, I got into the business because of the relationships that are possible, like feeling connected to other people and like being grounded in kind of a home tree, for lack of a better word. And so I'm always love to talk about other folks, whether they're in the back of the house, in the front of the house, whether they're going to be consultants or coaches. I love being able to like game out their stuff. It's exciting for me to be in support of someone else. But I also recognize that sometimes for me, it's a great excuse not to do my work. Right. And so I have right now, as much as I'd love to be able to, do 3 podcasts a week, I know that in my, and speaking specifically about my own business, that I need to be a little bit more focused and self-serving. And I don't necessarily want that to come across as being selfish, but I think sometimes, especially as a solopreneur, you have to at the beginning. Like they always tell you, you need to be known for one niche, one thing. And then when you get big and blow up, you can do other things. You can be known for other things, whether that's your guitar playing or your pottery or your running, or whatever that is. But at the very beginning, it's very important, especially building a not only business brand, but personal brand, to kind of hang your hat on one thing and keep pounding away at that. So for me, it's how do I fight that solo thing? To be frank, like hanging out with you. There's probably 5 or 6, 7 people that I trust implicitly, who have been as generous with me as they've been, as I've been with them. And so there's a certain amount of respect and admiration. And those are the people that I'm going to call up and say, hey, listen, I have this quandary right now. And I wonder if you have a couple minutes to talk about it. And that's also a recognition that for a long, long time, I would, keep it in my own head and wrestle it to the ground until I came up with a solution and pop up and like give the dissertation or the proclamation, which I understand, is a very masculine trait. Very often women will, the feminine loves to talk with one another because it's a co-cooperative experience. And my experience is a lot of men, because there's an inherent distrust of other men, they'll kind of hold it to themselves, think about it, try to come up with a solution, wrestle it to the ground, and pop up and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Not as a discussion, not as a co-cooperative experience. I was building our garden outside and had all the boxes, almost they're 10 by 10 boxes that I had cut into the side of this hill. And Jennifer came out as I was almost done, and she's like, "Ooh, fun! Let's do this." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Well, can we move one of the boxes?" I'm like, "No, the train has left the building system."
I love it.
And she wasn't doing it to screw me up. She was just doing it because she was excited about the possibility, and I had to let her know that no, the plan has already been made. And my breakdown was that I never talked to her about the plan before we did it. So,
Yeah.
And I guess to your point as well, I made some serious mistakes in my entrepreneurship, and some of them had to do with money. And I don't think that there have been that I've been 100% transparent with my partner about those things. And those are the things that kind of hang on my head and my heart. And so when I know that I'm not being like completely transparent and upfront and vulnerable with her, then that kind of works in the background against me. So part of it is also, she has her own business, so she's got a great deal of experience. And sometimes I have to work at like feeling like she's not trying to tell me what to do, but that she actually wants to be in contribution and help, because she wants me to be happy. And so there's an emotional fine line that I have to trip as well, and realize that for the folks who are in my circle, they have my best interest at heart, and I need to let them be in service to me, right? And so sometimes it's being willing to be helped.
Yeah, I want to deep dive into kind of this financial piece and the partner aspect, because it's really important. But before we go there, I just want to touch on what you said about building community. There was a time last year where I was super low. I've never worked from home before. It's a whole different thing, right? Keeping yourself busy, and it's hard to sit. And so I take a lot of laps around my living room. I take a lot of walks outside with the dogs. I take a lot of breaks. And there was a moment where I just had this immense sadness. And you mentioned it before, but I missed my teams so much. I missed the energy of walking into restaurants and feeling the music and the vibe and the guests and the fresh air and the lights and the decor and everything that goes into creating great hospitality, right? And I just had this moment and I became super emotional about it. And I said, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I've chosen to do. I'd rather work 80 hours a week and work for myself than ever work for anybody else again. I've made that. Mark Cuban said that a couple weeks ago, and I was like, hell yeah, Mark. And I've really kept that in the back of my mind. But I had to really think about when I was in restaurants and I was a managing partner, a regional manager, a general manager, what did I do to feel less lonely? Because leadership is lonely no matter what rank you're at, right? No matter what the job title is. And I remembered, I loved being a part of the Denver restaurant community because they were so collaborative and they were so supportive of each other. And I was the most successful when I had built a community of owners and operators that I could be with. I could see once a month in meetings through eDenver. I could bounce ideas off of. I could just engage with them and find out what was going on with them. I didn't even necessarily need to have someone to bounce things off of, but it just helped to relate to someone else that was in the same industry. And so I really had to take that lesson and bring it into what I'm doing now. So I equally appreciate you for letting me do that. So
thank you. And I just want to make one small point before we get into that financial piece, is that as lonely as being an entrepreneur is, being a visionary is even fucking worse. and I use that word very deliberately, because both you and I and the people in our orbit and our network have a vision of the hospitality industry that is not shared by the vast majority. The fact is that there's probably a lot of operators out there, restaurant owners, general managers, chefs, who gain some comfort in doing the same thing that they've always done. Right. But they shouldn't be lulled into this idea that they're going to get a different result. So I know that after, having spent much time with you, that we have an idea about what this industry could be, that is a little bit ahead of the curve. We're at the tip of the spear. And I remember someone asking me, like, I didn't even know this was a thing, chefs coaching other chefs. And I'm like, yeah, it hasn't been, but it will be, because the industry is poised perfectly in this spot for us to be able to bring our particular genius within this thing, and be in love and assistance to these organizations that are really looking to stop the Ferris wheel and shut the revolving door, and really focus on what it looks like to have retention rates, in excess of 80%, 85%, and build highly successful teams where it's a crucible for greatness, where these people come out of that tenure and go on to the greatness that they're destined to, because they've been nurtured and mentored in the right way. Yeah. So being a visionary can sometimes really suck. And that's why it's really important, like you said, to build community around that. And one little caveat to that is, I don't think I've been as good. Like I noticed your episode last week was with someone from an organization in Tucson, right? The Gastronomic Association.
Yeah, City of Gastronomy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I thought was a fascinating conversation. I don't think I've done as good a job at connecting all the dots here in Asheville, North Carolina, where I live, which is a huge food city. Mm-hmm. And I know that that's been in my back burner. And as we were talking about the goals for 2024, because this time between Christmas and New Year's is a perfect time to reflect, to count your wins, to look at the gaps and the gains. And there's no such thing as failure. It's just a gap. What do you need to do to close that gap? I think one of the things that I want to put on my list is to get out at least once a month and make a new connection at a restaurant in Asheville with either the general manager or the restaurant. Not to sell them anything, or not to just to connect and say, hey, I'm part of the fabric of this industry, and love to be connected. So.
Yeah. I mean, the vision of hospitality and how great it can be, it comes from a place, right? You and I have both been a part of concepts on both sides of the coin, right? I've run restaurants that have been wildly successful and had lines out the door for hours. And, where the hosts were on the tip of their toes to bargain off a table during pre-theater, two guests would come in and we were fully committed for the night, but we had a table open for 45 minutes on the turn and we'd get them in, right? And then I've been on the flip side where the turnover rate was 100% to 187% one of my locations. And I thought I was failing. And that was in the later half of my career, not because of ambiance or culture or environment, but because of the nature of the business and location of the business and who we were hiring, because that it was what it was. Right. And it just depends. But when you see success and you're a part of it, and you go into businesses and you see the opportunities, it's so hard not to just run up to operators and be like, I can help, they're like, fuck you. I hate consultants. I hate, who needs a coach? What, so, overcoming just the title and learning how to voice what we do to people is a huge challenge in and of itself, for sure.
Yeah. I think that there's some of us in this market that are doing a really good job at showing us a way forward to get out of this dollars for hours routine, or like the consultant comes in, he makes the changes and he or she leaves, and then the restaurant just reverts back to their own ways of being. Jim, I want to shout out to Jim Taylor, because I think he's been like one of the first ones to actually talk about what it's like to create strategic partnerships, as opposed to, clients' relationships. And I think that in and of itself, just the languaging shifts the entire energy around it. When you can talk to somebody about, a potential to work together, and it's like, no, we're partners. And, and that's a situation I'm in right now, where I'm working to shift the conversation from being a contract employee or a contract player to we're in partnership together. And saying that, I think for some folks is a new concept, because, they work so hard at creating this product, this restaurant of their own brain. It came out of their own thing. Like, they might not necessarily know everything about the business, but they know enough about hospitality to, to be able to, to create something that like hit it out of the ballpark early.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you make that sustainable? And then how do you build on that? How do you scale those? And that's where I get to come in partnership and assist them in not only him, but the entire team around that. So I'm grateful for, you and Jim and Scott, Scott Turner, about, just showing that there's a different way that this can be done. Because again, to me, it feels like working on the business instead of working in the business.
Absolutely. And I definitely share that mindset with you and Scott and Jim. And Jim has been on the show, episode 9. He talks a little bit more about that if any of the listeners want to check that out. But it is about teaching the leaders how to be better, right? It all starts at the top and making sure that this isn't about ego, right? It's not about, let me show you what I can do. It's truly about service, which is why we got into the hospitality industry in the first place. So let's switch gears. Let's talk turkey here. Yep. Partnership, financial, where are your goals and what's the reality?
Okay. So really going to hold my feet to the fire, right? Thanks. Appreciate that.
I'm here with you. So ask me whatever you want and I'll share.
Well, I could just blurt out some rote stuff. Like at 2023, I said I was going to speak on 4 stages. And those stages could be, it could be a speak to sell. It could be invited to someone else's event. It could be anything. I was successful on doing that in 2 stages. I've already booked 2 for 2024. So I'm going to leave it at, I'm going to be on 4 stages. Nice. I really love that environment because it's an opportunity to share my expertise and my experience in a non-threatening way, where I'm not coming to try to tell somebody how to run their business. And for those of you who are listening to this at your first time experiencing this, you have to understand that, there are some of us, names mentioned above, including Chris and myself. We're not going to come in there and tell you how to run your business. We're going to come in, we're going to ask you questions about where you'd like to be, and what's holding you back, and then backtrack and see how we can assist you in filling those up, because we want to set you up for success long after we're gone, such that you don't need us anymore. I love the fact that we are making ourselves obsolete, because as long as I was a chef for almost 40 years, I always felt that really a chef's job was to make himself obsolete, was to train until he was no longer needed, so that, others could actually step forward. So 4 stages, going to do 2 books. I've already published 4. And so I drug my feet last year. I had my health suffered, so I'm going to just call it 2 books, and those will be both audio and Kindle print, which is not a big deal. My main podcast, Chef Life Radio, I am switching things up. My frequency in 2023 was off, even though, believe it or not, it's still in the top 103 countries right now. But I'm going to go to a weekly frequency on Chef Life Radio. I'm going to do alternate it between an interview and then a solo. So I previously had done 2 different forms and 2 different podcasts. So I'm going to kind of just collapse everything together and just make it part of Chef Life Radio. Mm-hmm. As far as Chef Life Coaching, my coaching business. Okay. So it's 10,000 downloads per month for the podcast. It's 10,000 recurring revenue for Chef Life Coaching. That is going to come through mastermind, your monthly mastermind. And I have 1 course that I'm working on right now that I will launch by February 15th. And do a masterclass first online, and then enroll people into coming in. And that cohort.
Sorry, let me just ask you real quick, just for listeners. Why are you creating the mastermind? Why are you creating the course? What's the point?
Okay, so there are certain levels of, in the culinary industry, people are at different levels. So currently, I produce a ton of free content, and that's primarily for the folks who, for certainly not, I don't want them to be penalized, right? Mm-hmm. And so the mastermind is more of a monthly get together where people can actually, it's the So there's a difference between coaching and facilitating. I can do a one-on-one coaching job with somebody, but I want to be able to help the most in the most efficient time possible. So to have a cohort training, meaning that there's a group of people that come together for 12 weeks, I am able to assist as many people as I can in that particular time. The mastermind is for anybody who wants ongoing. And that's really about the wisdom of the group. So I facilitate that, but it's actually everybody in the group that gets to support one another. And that comes down to, putting people in hot seats. Like, this is the problem I have. There's a lot of messaging that is going on that, just take the simple message of like, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Chris Hall from the Burn Chef Project has been hammering this home for many years. And yet there's still groups of folks out there who like either don't want to acknowledge that for fear of what that's going to mean about them, or have felt like because this is the way that they were brought up, that's the way that they need to bring up others.
Totally. We talk about it at Chow all the time, right? Like that leave your shit at the door mentality that I was raised in.
Yep.
That it doesn't fly anymore. But again, it's asking operators to think differently and remember that they are hiring the entire human when they bring somebody into their restaurant.
Yep. And aside from that, I have one large client right now that is really going to take off in 2024. That currently that takes me to California on site 1 week per month. And there's a certain amount of hours remotely that I'm committed to doing. And I'm really looking forward to that relationship because it's about growing an existing business into multiple locations. So the first thing is, he just put in the deposit for the 24-foot food truck. So that's going to be cool. And from then on, it's creating the playbook of the systems and processes of the excellent work that they're already doing. So that's going to take up a majority of my time, and whatever time is left is going to be basically divided to this. Now, my wife is also a transformational coach and speaker. And so she's actually going to be doing her very first TEDx talk in Asheville in March. So that's very cool. It's the first time for her. And I assisted her in publishing her first book about 18 months ago, and that's been going great. It's been a great deal of lift for her company. And really it's about being of love and assistance to the industry that's given me so much.
Yeah.
I want to be able to give back.
Yeah. I want to highlight all the things that you're doing, right? Because you've got all these revenue streams. You talked about free content and the way that you and I, we're very similar in the way that we approach the business. You have to put out free content if you're going to be on social media, right? Gary Vee talks about this all the time. Jab, 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 right hook, right? Like you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to build credibility. You've got to position yourself as the expert. You have to build an audience on social, and you can choose whatever platform you want. We're both very passionate about LinkedIn, and we're on Instagram, Facebook, but you are saying, okay, I've got this coaching aspect to the business. That's one revenue stream. And the consultant piece, I've got the speaking engagements, I've got the books, I've got the mastermind, I've got the other courses. And how do you figure out where to spend your time and energy on all those things?
That's a great point. So the other thing is, Kristen, is this is going to be a year that I get full sponsorship for Chef Life Radio.
Yeah.
And
that's huge.
It is huge. I've been doing this since 2014 and have never had a full-time sponsor. I did some affiliate sales, but that didn't really work out very well because my market is so niched. It's for chefs who want to enjoy their careers without sacrificing their lives. So that's not all chefs. And but the ones who really want to enjoy their careers and enjoy their lives at the same time are a very specific niche. And I was listening to a podcast this morning where they have this thing called it's a New York Times podcast, but a company called Better Health, which you can contract for online counseling sessions and all that kind of stuff.
We use that through Red Bull. Tyler's got that. Yeah.
And I thought, what a great sponsor for my show.
Totally right.
where we talk about health and wellness all the time.
Yeah.
And they're already a podcast sponsor. So they already know the value, right? The other thing is there's a great organization called Chef's Roll And every year they do the unconvention. It's like, remember 7 Up being the uncola, this is the unconvention. So it's kind of kitschy and kind of tongue in cheek, but they put together a great event. And on page 3 of their website is a whole list of their sponsors. Like, so how do I know what to do first? I structure my weeks such that I can do some deep work on each one of these things.
Okay.
So I have the main client. I have the podcast. The podcast looks like Fridays. I'm doing batch recording, batch editing, batch posting. So I have the next month or at least 2 weeks ahead. Saturday is probably social media stuff and setting up the newsletter for the next week. It was brought to me that last week that sometimes it seems like I'm all across the board, like I'm using the shotgun approach. And when I talk about team leadership, I'm actually talking about 3 things, which is emotional intelligence, communication skills, and relationship skills. And within the purvey of those 3 things, these are the things that I want to continue to hammer home because I know what a difference they made in my career.
Yeah.
Right. And because I thought for a long time that my skill was going to secure my success. And the fact is that, that's just one small part of the business. I don't care how talented you are as a chef, unless you're, 40 seats or less, you need team members who are not going to hate you at the end of the day. So part of that is, looking for opportunities for speaking on stages. Part of it is, continuing to be interactive with our community on LinkedIn and the other service providers that are out there. I field probably like you, probably 3 or 4 calls a week by other people who want to know what we're doing in our business. Sometimes they have a product or a service to sell. Sometimes it's just to connect because of similar minds. And I love those conversations because you never really know what's going to happen on the back end of that. The books is just a part of my morning routine. I wake up in the morning at 4:00, do my workout, come back, write for an hour, 600 words a day, come hell or high water. That's it. And so for me, it's focusing in on, okay, what's going to be my 600 words about today? And that's outside of social media posting. It's just, I have a day Monday where I kind of block all that stuff out in the morning. So since my client is on the West Coast, that gives me a certain amount of leeway in the morning so I can block out 3 days to do deep work, and I'll assign myself to do deep work along these particular lines. And ultimately the universe will redirect me, right? If I'm not getting any action on this side, but all of a sudden it's heating up on this side, I'll recognize that that's where I need to shift a little bit more. Where I've gotten tripped up is kind of being stubborn and saying, I have to do this, regardless of the results. And if there's no results coming, I have to be smart enough to like, listen, pushing a noodle up a hill ain't no fun, but being in the flow is really fun. Like when I'm in my lane and everything seems to flow and is coming towards me to meet me, that's really exciting for me. And so I want to be able to be aware of when that's happening and when it's not happening. Did I answer your question right?
You did. It's interesting. One of the tough things for me has been, I'm so impatient. I got into this thinking, I'm going to make $100,000 my first year. Okay, I made a third of that. Okay. And then again, incorporating all of these projects, there's so much strategy that goes into every single aspect of how you write content, to how you produce a podcast, to the title, to the social media posts on each platform, to the guests, to the style of interviews that you're doing, to collaborating. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. And so I'm like, okay, I launched something and I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm going to go to, I want 2,000 downloads, right? And I'm at like 600, I think, as of this week, but
which is fantastic.
It takes time. And I have had to really lean into and get comfortable with and celebrate progress. When I learn something new and I tweak something around the quality of what I'm doing and I feel good about it, I don't see that. I don't get that instant gratification of, we've talked about it before, dropping a plate of food in front of a guest and watching their eyes light up. We don't get that, right? Because you just put it out there.
Well, and I think to our benefit, because I know for a fact in my own career and life that this idea of instant gratification has not necessarily been a friend to me, because then I expect it everywhere. And the fact of the matter is, working out or writing a book or or being an architect or what, those are long range things. And if I don't have my ego in check, I forget that delaying gratification towards a particular result is a healthy thing. And it's taken some rewiring in my brain. So it's, when you don't have a lot of dopamine going on in your brain pops up receptors for dopamine because it wants to grab it wherever it exists, which feels good. And so when you want to increase your level of dopamine, whether, you're doing it through sex, exercise, drugs, whatever, and there's too much dopamine, your brain starts to thin out those receptors so it's not getting bombarded. So it's self-regulating the entire time. Well, when you revert back to not having a lot of dopamine in your brain, now your brain has to again kind of self-regulate and start popping up more receptors, and that takes time. So I totally get, like, looking at your bank book every week. Okay, did I need how do I, hey, like, oh my God, and did I get a client? What is there any, like, yeah, leads are great, calls are great, and yet, like you said, the skill sets that we're actually learning, or that, to a certain extent, we teach ourselves through all the wonderful resources out there, and nobody ever take that away. I mean, that's gold. Totally. and will serve us long into the future, which is what I used to tell all the cooks coming up. Like, you learn this, nobody can ever take it away. Like, this is your guarantee that the next job you have, you'll be able to ask for more money because you're more experienced. You have more skill sets. And it's a really important thing to remember.
It's been a huge shift for me, though, because, we were talking about this earlier. I've always, I've been the breadwinner the majority of our marriage.
Yeah.
I've had health insurance. I had one 401k for, I think, a year of my career. And that's just the nature of our business, right?
Wow. You had one?
I had one. Woohoo. And now I don't know how to budget. I don't know I don't have stable income coming in. I'm relying on Tyler for health insurance.
Right.
401k through him. And so, yes, I love learning all these things, but yes, I jump up and down every time I get a PayPal alert that
absolutely
invoice has been paid, even though I know it's coming. But it's, being really open and honest with your partner has been, it's strengthened our relationship, but I have to be really careful I don't want to lean on him too much to bring in all the money in the house. I want to show up. We're also very competitive with each other in a healthy way. So it's been a curve for sure for me. So
yeah, and I think historically, my dad never taught me about money. I don't remember anybody ever sitting me down and saying, this is how you balance a checkbook. I think I was 17 or 18 when I got my very first credit card, which was a Montgomery Ward credit card. For those people, tells you how old I am. and this is when Montgomery Ward also had an auto center and a gas station. And so within about 7 months, I had busted out that credit card, just filling up my car with gas. And, I got, what do you mean I have to pay you more? Like, I don't pay you the same, like, I never. And so I busted out my very first credit card, and I use that as an example to, like, everything about money I've had to learn on my own, and mostly from making mistakes. Whereas, in fact, my wife is very, very good with money and always has been. And her dad is also, family's just been good. I mean, her dad has had some great businesses and also lost his ass on a couple, but he's always managed to come out smelling like a rose because he always looked at it. For him, money is like a unit of measure. It doesn't mean anything to him. Like, I made money mean something to me. Like, it's some type of representation of my value in the market. So hence, if I'm not getting any money, then I must suck. Right. Which is definitely the wrong way to go about it. And as I said, sometimes it takes the market a little while to catch up to where you're at. Right. Again, as if you're if you're talking about stuff that people are like, huh, what are you talking about? Like, that'll never work. And it takes a while for that to catch up. So money conversations for me have always been very difficult to have because I don't like looking like an idiot. I don't know anybody who does. And there have been plenty of times when I've looked like an idiot when it came to money. Although I would say that the only time I actually switched things around is when I was completely transparent and kind of, in my mind, courageous to kind of bring it up with my wife, saying, hey, listen, I got to tell you this. I don't know how to tell you this, but you can be mad if you want, but I just need to be. And very often there comes a plan. There's some action that gets to be taken. I remember when I first met her, I think my credit was like 525, and within 3 years it was 750 because we worked together. And so together is definitely the way to go. And you think I would have learned that lesson. But again, as a solopreneur, you're like, she's got her business, I've got mine.
Yeah.
I got to prove that I'm just as good as her, and 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 like you said, it's weird. I spent most of my life being the provider. And I think this is one of the first times ever in my life where my wife makes more money than I. And I don't begrudge her that, but I'm also very clear about that.
Yeah. So. I know I've got one final question for you, but I know you said you had a couple things you wanted to ask me.
Yeah.
Did I answer them already?
Well, I guess we talked a little bit about it, and you've been pretty, like, I love some of your posts. When you decide to go vulnerable, you really go vulnerable. And so there was this whole idea about how you actually switched up eating and drinking based upon how you were then and how you were, and to, like, I guess I would say, like, what caused you to want to change?
My eating and drinking.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're sober now and have been for a while, successfully so. And we were talking earlier, like, when the money was coming in, it was easy to make bad decisions. And now it's like, nope, there's a certain bit of value that's really important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it all over the place, but for people who don't know, Tyler had started having seizures and was going through DTs, and it was watching your husband have a seizure at your house in your home is the scariest thing I've ever seen. That was the first wake-up call that we were living a life that was extremely dangerous and not sustainable. We quit drinking. We started drinking again. And the thing about when you start and stop is for us, and I've talked to a lot of people that have done the same thing, you start drinking just as much as you were before. And so it hits you like a ton of bricks. And so we were vacationing in Palm Springs, visiting some friends, and we had been drinking that weekend. We went to the Oakland airport. We had a layover coming back from Denver. We went to the bar. We ordered a glass of wine, shot of tequila, and which is my go-to. And that's the last thing I remember was sitting down and ordering those first drinks. I woke up in the hospital, and Tyler said we walked to the terminal and I passed out. And I was supposed to fly home. I was leading a big manager workshop the next day. We missed our flight. I woke up in the hospital. I was terrified. I had no idea what had happened. And for me, that was rock bottom. That's all I needed. I was like, everything was out of my control. I was so lucky to be with Tyler. And that was it for me. And then, he and I worked through, he had a seizure again, this time at the wheel of his car, and luckily walked away without any scratches. And that we really just put our heads together and said, look, we need to get some help. We're going to do this together. It's hard to get sober on your own. It's hard with a partner too, right? It was bittersweet. I mean, we had each other to lean on, but it's also like you're worried about yourself and you're worried about somebody else too. So the biggest thing for me was once I made that decision, I mean, I was so sick of waking up in physical pain every day from drinking, jumping on the Peloton, trying to sweat it out so I could go to work again, and then planning my day around when's happy hour going to be, 4:00, 5:00, kind of scheduling my day around things. And I got to the point where I looked in the mirror and I was like, who are you? When you were in your prime, loving your work and so passionate about what you did, you were fucking fearless and you could take on anything. I was beating the shit out of myself every single morning, going, why are you doing this? Why are you so overweight? You're so disgusting. I mean, the judge voice that I talk about all the time in my head was so fucking loud, and it just took over everything. And it impacted the more I drank and the more I ate. I lost value for myself, right? And that worth that you talked about earlier. So I knew that I wanted to do more and I wanted to have more energy. My brain wanted to move faster than my body would allow it. And I had to reverse it. I knew what it felt like to be healthy. I knew what it felt like to run, to be in the gym, to set goals, to achieve them. And I had just gotten really lost and lost my confidence throughout a portion of my career and stayed in a position with a boss that I worked. I just stayed too long and I did not handle it well. I let my mindset completely turn into this victim, and I was just fed up with who I was. And I knew that I was the only one that had control to do something about it.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I was thinking about something you said earlier about missing your team. And I was curious to know, have you done any work around grieving that?
Well, it's interesting. When we moved to Tucson, we both our plan was to take 3 months off each and just reconnect. And, when you're not drinking, you have to figure out how to find new hobbies and spend that time, right? You know that right now.
Boy, don't I.
Yep. Oh, Adam, I'm sorry. My computer's going to die. Hang on a second.
Okay. Yeah. Monty.
Thank God for editing. That's my first time doing that. So when we moved to Tucson, we took a few months off. I got myself into a place where I was ready to start working on the business and creating the business. And I read this amazing book, The Prosperous Coach by Rich Litvin, and it's all about how to start your coaching business simply by building connection with people that you know. So I picked up the phone and I probably called 200 to 300 people that I used to work with over the last 20 years and just connected, just asked them how they were doing, checked in on their life. And, some of these people I hadn't talked to forever. And it was such a beautiful way to not feel lonely in a new community, but to still serve them by checking in on them. And I learned so much more about them through those conversations than I did working together, because I was very much like hyper rational, leave your shit at the door, don't bring your emotions in. And so I really got to be vulnerable with people. And I feel like those conversations helped me be closer to them than I had even when we were working together in person, which was pretty powerful.
Yeah. That's so cool. And what a great idea, right? I got a DM from somebody on LinkedIn who was incredibly depressed because he felt like he had kind of aged out of the hospitality industry. Like there's this unspoken thing about ageism in our industry that I think I'm going to focus on this year, because he was like, I think at 50 and could not get an interview as a chef at all. And I told him, I'm like, well, if you're asking me for coaching, I would say that, every job that I've gotten of any consequence has come through a personal connection with somebody. So instead of like sending out your resume, I would just start sending out emails and making phone calls to your personal network and say, hey, just curious, I'm in the network. Da, 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 da. Like I see folks on LinkedIn saying, open to a new position, such a which I think is great. But I'm just curious. I just don't necessarily know if there's much traction on that, as opposed to like, we have an entire community right in our pocket on our cell phone. And how often do we forget that, whether we're feeling lonely or we need a new lead or whatever that is, that it's just as close as our pocket. And one other thing that really landed with me is, I don't know what the statistics are, but I know that a lot of addicts end up dying of overdoses because after being clean and sober, they decide that they're going to get a little taste, and they use the same amount that their bodies were used to before, and the body can't handle it. And I just think that is such a testament to the resiliency of the human body. Like, holy shit, man, all we have to do is get out of the fucking way and it repairs itself such that it will no longer put up with the same amount of poison that that it was taken in before, or that we were putting in it before. So for anybody who's thinking that you're too old, you're too fat, it's your time has passed you by, that's bullshit. There's never a good, there's never a good time to start. Okay. Because there's always a reason to continue certain behaviors, but if not now, when? And you got to start somewhere. I mean, I was at the gym at 5:15 this morning, and I hadn't been 18 months since before I was having really problems, and then my surgeries. And I got there so early that I didn't remember that they opened up at 5:30, not at 5 o'clock. So I'm standing outside, and that first squat, oh my God, that first squat hurts so bad. And it was an empty bar, right? I just used I was so unsure of where my body was physically that there was no weight on the bar, but pretty soon I put a little bit of weight. And I felt awkward, like my balance was off a little bit, and it wasn't quite, and I didn't care. I have a t-shirt that says, fuck my feelings, I work out anyway. Right? Because sometimes I'll wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like doing that. Well, fuck my feelings. I'm going to get up and do it anyway, because no one is coming to save me, and no one's coming to save you. And I think both of us are smart enough to know that, it's like the life that we want is just on the other side of the work that we're unwilling to do. So I think, knowing you and what your journey's been like, you're willing to do the work, which is been a great, kick in the ass for me. Like, well, if Kristen can do it, shit.
Jesus Christ.
No, you listen, you crossed the finish line in your race this year, didn't you?
I missed the starting line, but I made it to the finish line. First half marathon in 11 years. My God.
See, now how cool is that? Now
amazing.
Now here in Asheville, they have the Flying Squirrel 10 miler. Okay. In June. I'm gonna do that.
I love that. That's amazing.
I am not gonna go fast. but I'll complete it. Last year I was supposed to do a Spartan race, and that didn't work out, but I'll start small.
I love it. What are you most excited about in 2024?
Discovering what consistency looks like, because I recognize that again, as a passionate person and a creative person, I can sometimes, like you said, chase the silver ball, or the new sparkly thing, or, oh my God, it's this and this, that. So my word for 2024 is consistency. So whatever I set out to do in my list of goals, which, this list of goals is yet to be vetted by my wife. So she and I get to have goals together too. So there may be some things that shift around this, because for years we've been saying hey, wouldn't it be great if we just took the month of August off and went to Spain and lived there? And so we're in Canada a couple of days ago visiting our folks, and I said, I don't want to hear this. It would be like either we're going to do it, we're not going to do it. I don't know about you, but if we save it for another year, who we kidding? Like, who's to say we're going to be here another year? So we're happy, we're healthy, and we might as well use the opportunity while we have it. So I'm really looking forward to experiencing that with her. And again, this idea of just being consistent, Adam, you don't have to, you don't have to swing for the fence. Just take a good, healthy swing every time you get up to the plate. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And you, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I was going to say, I want a postcard from Spain. So let's make that happen. That would be so cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to happen.
Love it. I am going to publish my book this year.
Really?
Yeah. I've been getting up every morning at 5 and writing. And I know thank you for all the resources you've given me. And my goal is to have it written by the end of January, and then find an editor and self-publish. So rock and roll. Here we go.
Well, when you're ready for your launch team, please include me.
I will. Adam, thanks so much for being here again. I know you will be back. We've got so many topics and conversations that we can talk about. So, all right, listeners, thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe and listen anywhere you find your podcasts. Please check out Chef Life Radio as well, and Adam Lamb on LinkedIn. Any other plugs, Adam, you want to include there?
No, that's good.
Okay.
That's good.
And you can find me on LinkedIn at Kristen-Marvin, and my first name is spelled Christin. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.